on, fellas? It's your boy Gsluke bringing you some value picks for the Scottish Open. So excited to hop into these dumpster diver plays. Going to be my top 6 plays, $8,000 and cheaper on Draftkings, to give you an idea of some of the diamonds in the rough that I'll be getting to in my lineups. And of course, going to give some flexibility up top to maybe get an extra stud or two. But even more than that, also some much needed leverage for these large field contests, right? You gotta be a little bit creative here in the 7K range, the 6K range, to make sure we're not duplicating ourselves with, 50 to 100 of our best friends in these large field GPPs, but that's going to be the goal of the video here. So don't want to waste any time at all. Not going to BS you. Let's go ahead and hop right on in. All right, at number 1, we've got Tyrrell Hatton at $7,800. And one thing I'll say to start is that every pick on here isn't going to be a sexy, flashy play, one that checks all the boxes from the modeling perspective. Like I said, we're looking for diamonds in the rough. We've got to take a little bit of a stretch here every now and then. Now, from a long-term perspective, Tyrrell Hatton, a world-class player, multiple wins on the PGA Tour, also internationally, but more than that, loves himself a links-style setup. Anytime we've got him at this venue or venues that resemble this type of golf course, he has seemed to play his best golf, and it makes sense. He's a little bit of a shorter player, not short off the tee, but much more of a short game specialist than anything, and at a link style setup that requires creativity both on and around the greens, that would seem to make a lot of sense. So if we take a look at the course history, that's what I'm honing in on here. You can see a top 20 finish in 2021, but also played there in 2019 and had a top 15 finish. And while those aren't flashy, he's one of the few players in this range that has actually played the golf course. So a lot of this is blacked out here, but of the players in the 8K range that aren't European Tour players, you're looking at 1, maybe 2 starts at the very most. So don't look too much into that there. Tyrrell Hatton, outside of this specific event, has also made his name known on the DP World Tour, formerly the European Tour, at golf courses that fit this same type of build, which is a birdie fest, a course where you're really looking to make putts in bunches, and pretty much everyone who finishes in the top 5, maybe even top 10 to 15 at this event seems to gain at least 3 to 4 strokes with the putter. So that would certainly fit Tyrrell Hatton's game. But of late, the real red flag here, and the reason why I think he's going to be low owned, and also why he's only $7,800, has been the recent form. Though he did make the cut in 3 of his last 4 starts, had an ugly missed cut at the RBC Canadian, just a top 15 at the PGA, hardly made the cut at the US Open. So for somebody of his pedigree, we're probably expecting a little bit more from Hatton, and that's why we're getting such a good price, and at least what I'm expecting to be a low ownership number. So I like going to him a little bit early, obviously buying in that we're hoping he can rebound quicker than others expect him to, because of late has been a little bit scratchy, right? Clearly not playing his best golf, but we've seen these type of players turn it around in a hurry before, and at a link style setup that really does play into his strengths, I think that is more than viable here. So the shots gained metrics, they're not quite as bad as what you'd expect, right? Just a slight loser off the tee. The approach numbers haven't been all that ideal, but gaining in the 2 short game categories, right? What we're used to seeing from Tyrrell Hatton. So at the very least, he has retained his skill set, hasn't gone away from those strengths over the last 24 rounds. It's just the ball striking that needs to turn around. And for Tyrrell Hatton, that is certainly an X factor, something that he doesn't always have. But this is why these are GPP plays, right? These aren't going to be core picks for us. These are more high upside plays that I'm trying to get to one, save salary, right? I think he's a lot cheaper than he should be, and obviously to try and get some leverage to the field. So I think I'm there at $7,800, not a safe play, but somebody I'll be getting to in quite a few lineups. Next up, a little bit more of a traditional pick here. So while Tyrrell Hatton, obviously a little bit more of a course history angle on that one, Mito Pereira looks great from the stat perspective. So if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, you'll get a feel for what I'm talking about, where he's gaining over 1.75 shots tee to green per round, obviously mostly carried by his ball striking numbers, but also has carried a neutral putter, which for Mito can definitely be a little bit volatile. There's weeks where it seems like he can't miss from 10 to 15 feet, and then weeks where it feels like he cannot make anything from 10 feet in. So obviously Mito Pereira, you're hoping you're getting that positive end of the volatility when it comes to those putting stats. But outside of that, the recent form is you've seen that volatility, right? Missed cuts when the putter hasn't been there, but when he has his best stuff, which he did for a 4 event stretch there, top 15 finish, top 10 at the Charles Schwab, obviously fell apart there in 18 at the PGA Championship, and then another top 20 at the Byron Nelson. This guy clearly is laying the blueprint here. It's kind of similar to a Justin Thomas, where it is all going to be about the putter. When he brings it, you're absolutely going to have him, and when he doesn't have it, you're probably going to wish that you're fading him. The real X factor for me here is that the greens around this golf course are going to resemble major championship type greens, and it's not because they're going to be running at like 12.5, 13 on the stimp meter. It is much more about the undulation in play. These link style golf courses have waves to them, they have trenches in the middle of them, just swales that you aren't used to seeing over on the American side. And at Brookline, you saw similar greens, obviously. You take a look at some of the recent form here. That was where he missed the cut, so that's slightly disappointing. But Memorial, tough greens, infamous there at Jack Nicklaus, right? Charles Schwab, also extremely undulating bent grass greens. PGA Championship there at Tulsa, right? Top 5 finish, more greens that were kind of similar to what we're going to get this week. So in general, I definitely have high hopes for his upside here. I hope we don't get a repeat performance of what we saw at the US Open, but the stats look great on Mito. I'm expecting the putting to either be there or not be there this week. And for large field GPPs where I'm looking for that upside, that's what I'm looking for, right? I don't want somebody to have a ceiling of like just a top 10 finish. I want somebody who can actually go out there, finish in the top 5, or perhaps even go out and win the golf tournament. And he's certainly got that type of firepower. Next up, we've got HV3, Harold Varner III at $7,500. The modeling's okay on him. He's been solid over his last 24 rounds. You can see almost gaining across all 4 categories, just a marginal loser in terms of the putting. Off the tee, right around a neutral as well, but on approach has been one of the better players in the world. And of course, that is the most important stat week to week on the PGA Tour, and is also the most consistent stat week to week from what we see in terms of our modeling. So for HV3, one of the plays where if you're looking to play in cash or smaller field contests like single entries, 2 to 3 maxes, I like him even more. But for these large field GPPs as well, I think he has plenty of upside, because if we look at the recent form, just in terms of finishes, I mean, you can see what we're looking at here, right? I know it's not all that flashy, right? Top 30 at the Charles Schwab, that's pretty decent, particularly for some of those 2 to 3 maxes. Top 15 at the RBC Canadian, he just hasn't had that ceiling of late, but he's getting by, he's putting up these performances, and it is all about that putter, right? He just hasn't had it of late. And even when he's gained, it's only been a stroke or 2. We need that true ceiling performance from HV3, which we've seen plenty of times in his career, just not over the last month or so. And with the ball striking around the green, even the off the tee numbers we've seen from him week to week on tour, there's a few weeks where he's been able to gain 3.5, 4 strokes to the field off the tee. If we get a week where we can marry those two together, I mean, you could be looking at his first PGA Tour win. And obviously, it'd be a little bit of an asterisk here because this is a co-sanctioned event over there in Scotland, but would be a heck of an event for him to win to start, because it is obviously a very stacked field. Next up, we got Sebastian Munoz, who's even better from the stat perspective. You can see also gaining across the board, not marginally in one category, is actually gaining across all 4 categories, and most significantly in the 2 ball striking categories. So that is great to see, obviously. Right around a third of a stroke per round, both off the tee and approach. Course history is non-existent. The recent form has also been a little bit more consistent than we're used to seeing, but nothing truly that flashy. Maybe outside of what we saw at the Byron Nelson, which was also a birdie fest, which of course is great to see because I'm expecting a winning score close to 20 under par this week. But even at the US Open, top 15, that was surprising given that was a hard setup. And Sebastian Munoz, not really known for taking home hard golf courses, so clearly was playing well. Top 25 at the Canadian, a course that really didn't fit his game either, but still finished in the top 25. And even the Charles Schwab and PGA Championship, these aren't courses where I expected him to play well, right? We didn't really play him during that stretch. If we did, it was just as a flyer or a value pick. At the Byron Nelson, we expected him to play well, right? Finished in the top 5. That's what I'm looking for, and for him to just be treading water over those last few weeks, I know a lot of people might look at that as a negative, like, oh, we haven't seen that top-end upside from Sebastian Munoz. It's because you got to get him on the right type of golf course, and a golf course that's going to surrender a ton of birdies, like we're going to see this week, where perhaps 25 under par is needed to win. That is exactly what I'm looking for with Sebastian. So, of course, the shots gained metrics look beautiful for him. He doesn't have any course history. Because he's also in the middle of the 7K range, I'm hoping he's not going to be mega chalk, right? Because I think he should be at least 20% owned, at least If I was controlling every lineup in the field, I would try to get him in at least 20% of my lineups. But because you have guys like Chris Kirk around him, who's going to be a great model play this week, Maverick McNeely, I expect quite a few people to get to. Even guys like Robert McIntyre, who's got the local narrative, also a great player on the DP World Tour. You got Mito up there. I don't know if he's going to be mega chalk. Same thing with HV3, right? Another great play in this range. So I'm kind of hoping that it's a little bit flatter in the middle of the 7K range than it might be in most weeks. And we get something like 12-13% ownership on both of those plays. Next up, we've got Gary Woodland, who's kind of like Terrell Hatton, a little bit more speculative. Obviously, I don't believe has played here before. You can see, outside Terrell Hatton, we'll talk about the last pick down there a little bit later. None of these middle tier options have played here before. The recent form, though, has kind of been there, right? You've seen a little bit of hit or miss from Gary Woodland. You saw it down during the Florida Swing, had a few top 5, top 10 finishes, top 10 at the U.S. Open, another top 25 at the Mexico Open, but a couple of miscuts mixed in there as well, right? Memorial, Charles Schwab, harder golf tournaments, Wells Fargo Championship, harder golf tournament. U.S. Open was also harder, but he finished in the top 10. But where this guy really did a lot of his damage this year were in the Birdie Fest. I mean, even during the fall swing at no-cut events, it was when he was going out there and playing his best golf. So this week at an event where I think 20, maybe 25 under par is the winning score, he's the type of player that gets an even bigger boost in my modeling because he makes a ton of birdies, top 25 in birdie or better percentage, bomber off the tee, which is going to help him around this venue, and also somebody who can get hot with the flat stick. And of late, that's really kind of been his issue, right? You can see losing a third of a stroke per round on the greens. Outside of that has been outstanding. Gaining a ton off the tee, close to 2/3 of a stroke per round, and gaining just a little bit under half a stroke per round with the approach play. So overall, I think the ball striking will be there. It's all going to be about the flat stick. But if you remember just a few months ago, guys, Gary Woodland was a top 5 putter on the PGA Tour. He's extremely streaky. And like I said before, these are for large field GPPs, these plays. I'm trying to go out there, beat 50 to 100,000 other entries, and Gary Woodland, when he brings that putter to the table, is the exact type of play that can crack the slate. Now for Terrell Hatton, obviously, he's a little bit more consistent on the greens. It's all about whether he brings the irons to the table. But if either of these players is able to accomplish that feat, watch out, because they could be due to go out there and break the slate. So I'll be playing significant ownership of both of these players. And for Gary Woodland, obviously a little bit of a different stance than what we have there on Terrell Hatton, but both players equally likely to find that ceiling performance to crack the code when it comes to what they've been struggling at of late. And for that reason, I'm certainly in on them. And lastly, maybe the oddest of the bunch here, the one pick that certainly is a little bit volatile, going to be a risky play. So kind of similar to Cameron Champ last week, who did miss the cut. This is somebody that I'm taking a chance on, and the main reasoning behind it is the course history. So it's a similar take to what we got with Terrell Hatton, because he had a top 10 finish there in 2020, but also a top 15 finish there in 2019. We know EVR is an aggressive player, high birdie percentage player, usually top 30 on the PGA Tour anytime you check his stats, and that's because he is aggressive. He's willing to take aim at pins. He's also very solid with the approach play. He's going to be a gainer in that category. With the putter, kind of similar to a hand, kind of similar to a few other picks we've talked about. A little bit more inconsistent, we'd say. I mean, that's probably the nice way to put it with the flat stick, right? He could definitely struggle from time to time there. So if we take a look at the last 24 rounds, you can see that's really been the case, right? With the short game losing over half, well, I should say close to half a stroke per round around the green, but close to 2/3 of a stroke per round with the flat stick. Around the green, I'm not going to worry about this week, right? It's a birdie fest. You're going to make a few bogeys. That's going to be okay. Going to be more about the birdies that you're making, and from the fantasy perspective, that is by far the more important aspect. But he's got to bring that flat stick. But for whatever reason, at this golf course, the last few times he's played here, he's managed to finish in the top 15, and you're not going to finish in the top 15 here without making putts. We've seen over the years that putting specialists seem to have a really nice time around this venue. The X factor, what gets you into that top 5 to top 10, is having the ball striking upside, and we know Eric Van Rooyen is going to bring that to the table, right? Even over a horrible stretch of golf, he's still gaining in both the ball striking categories. It's going to be all about the putter, and at this venue, I think there's something to be said about the course history. It seems like he's figured out these greens, so if he can go out there, continue to ball strike it like he has with, the approach play has been unbelievable for quite some time at this point. I mean, even over the last 50 measured rounds, you can see gaining off the tee, gaining with the approach play, and the putter not quite as bad. So of late has been trending in the wrong direction, but perhaps he can channel into some of that experience that he has around this venue, continue to ball strike it like he has, and post something in that top 10 to top 15. I think that's more than reasonable from him, especially considering that when he posted those performances, he was a shell of the player he is now. He was extremely inexperienced. He did not have a PGA Tour win under his schedule, was not in the top 100 of the official World Golf rankings. You would expect him to only improve on those results. And at this point, I think EVR is going to be sub 5, maybe even sub like 3% owned this week. I think he's going to be completely overlooked and somebody I think has a lot more upside than people are giving him credit for. All right, boys, that's all I've got for the value picks. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you're playing as your #1 value this week. And also, make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. It helps me out with growing the channel, lets me know that you're enjoying the content as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you for helping me grow this channel. And also, look forward to the live stream tonight. We'll have one at 7 p.m. Eastern time for the betting live stream, but also tomorrow, Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we will be doing our live DFS live stream. So talking about everything DFS related, whether it's the weather, player poll projections, your live questions. We're going to touch on everything you need to know. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel as well, I would highly recommend you go ahead and do that too. You'll get notified when I'm going live. Also when I post any content in the future, whether it's prize picks videos, showdown content, or DFS content for future events to come. You're not going to want to miss any of it. Again, guys, I appreciate all the support here. Best of luck with all of your lineups this week for the Scottish Open here. Should be a fun event for sure to watch, and let's get this cash.